Hello, and it's week 8. It's a big week, so we're going to finish up, and we've been working several weeks now. Uh, if you think back, you were able to take your content and figure out what parts of it, what are the molecules, so to speak, that make up this group of of a record, and then you took a look at those records in a bigger picture way and tried to figure out how can you organize these at a higher level. And then we worked on navigation, which is where do you put those ways to navigate at a higher level. And then last week we got to take a look at the first wireframe, which is meant to start to explain how does somebody find something within your content. And one thing that many of you have maybe struck has struck a nerve, perhaps, is it's not easy to do this. So I'm still trying to coach as many people as I can about different techniques. I know a lot of people, once records go onto the screen, a big question is what makes them go in this order. And many of you, pardon me, worked on something like being in alphabetical order. Well, the way you organize content really is the goal of this course, and navigating content is peculiar to our profession of information architecture. So we're hitting both of those with this project. So the final part of the project is to take somebody and have them use your navigation scheme. So using a navigation scheme, I'll show you in just a second. One thing I do want to make sure is, of course, take a look at the module for this week. Take a look at the assignment. So the assignment's going to be submitting 4 parts. What I'm really hoping for is a link to Figma, because you can put all of these parts in Figma. Part 1 is that sitemap. If you've changed your sitemap, if you've rethought things, please redo these so that they all kind of tell a story together. So the sitemap is that big major grouping exercise. How do people get around in a sort of a very big picture way? We're going to do this week a flow diagram, and the flow diagram is going to be about I'll show you in just a moment. Then you have your detail view that you completed this week. Make sure that you've taken a look at everyone else's work to try to understand what is the goal of this, is to really demonstrate navigation pattern. And I'm looking for an appropriate navigation pattern because you're going to demonstrate the navigation pattern in the final part, which is going to be called a storyboard. I call it a storyboard only because it's going to be read from left to right, and it's usually a sequence. So read this carefully so you know what you need to do, and hopefully the submission is going to be in Canvas, and it's going to be a URL to Figma. If you really need to put this together as a PDF, I'm kind of not as fond of that for a lot of reasons, but if that's the way it needs to happen, that's fine. Many of you have drawings. You might find that it might be a little bit quicker to make your wireframes in a drawing program because there's going to be a fair amount of repetition that I want to see, but drawings and pictures posted into Figma are also fine. So if you have any questions, of course, I'm going to be here to answer them. So here's last week. One great thing is you might start to see a lot of similarities between the way you all, even though you have very different content, you're using very similar ways to display it, and that's on purpose. Actually, we're all going to kind of converge a little bit, that there are only so many ways you can do this, and that's fine. And that also gets to a bit higher level meta issue about content and how it's organized, but we'll get there soon. Certainly the next 2 weeks I'll talk about in just a second. So also start to think a little bit about how you're getting used to using Mural. Like, it isn't an obvious thing that organization comes easily. And I think many of you are starting to understand that there is a fair amount of effort and convention to even being able to understand information online. So don't discount the work that you've done in making Mural work, and I really appreciate all your thoughts about clickability. The reason why this is here is similar to last week. You were working on what are navigation patterns, and this week you're applying them. Feel free to give me comments in the way the course is structured. I'm wanting you to kind of think about it last week because it's a little bit of a hard problem to implement immediately. And this week, as someone's clicking on something, I'm going to be very interested in how do they know you can click on it. And so I want you to make sure we're still not using color or anything like that, or some of the interactive things, but there's some conventions to what is clickable, and that's why this is here this week, and next week you will apply this. So let's go to this week, week 8. There we go. So week 8 is going to be about learning a little bit of a flow diagram. So my hope is that if you do the flow diagram this week, then I can just sort of take a look and make sure the flow diagram story is going to be probably somebody landing, let's say, on the very first page, whatever that looks like. And then they're going to navigate to one section, which is hopefully your detail page. And if they need a couple of steps to get there, that's fine. Once they get to that page, I'd like them to manipulate that information in some ways and or change their mind and want to see a different set of data. So it's usually about 5 or 6 steps, but what I want to make sure is that you've thought through how do people get around. If you think back to week 1, we talked about navigating a space. You know, how do you know where to go? Where's signage and so forth? This is going to be your demonstration that your signage or your architecture is effective to help people get around your content. And then, so there's a very big place to share those diagrams. Those can be sketched on a piece of paper. That's fine. Please, there's a little article here about learning this shorthand. It is meant to display a little bit and just make you think about, they'll see some things, they'll choose something, and then they'll see something else and choose something else. It's a nice little shorthand to just help you think through what do people see and what do they do. And then this will be where, if you like, you can share. There's plenty of room to share. We do need to be mindful of other students. Share for each other mainly. I'm going to be able to take a look, but probably it'll be a little too complicated for me perhaps to give beat by beat instructions, but you've seen I can try to jump in whenever necessary to help, and that's what I'll do this week. That's going to be due on Monday, and then we're going to actually move into a whole new part of the course. So that's going to be all the things that you've probably felt are lacking, such as popularity, other things that help you see and make people interested in large data sets. So that's going to happen next week. We're also going to stop working on projects like this ourselves. We're going to go and look out into the world and find a company that's basically taken user-submitted data, and it's data that you're going to look at, and they've organized it in a way that is effective. And so you're going to actually use the things that you've done in the class of how do you do that, and try to help me understand how did this company do it. And you're going to write a paper on that, and that'll be the final project. So more on that in the next couple weeks. Now it's to finish this up. If there's any questions, of course, let me know. And good luck. Cheers.